Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today we're going to be taking a look at a multi-tool that I've wanted to check out for quite a little while now, but every time I go to look for it, it seems like it's out of stock, and that is the Gordon multi-tool from Harbor Freight. Now, this is a Leatherman Wave clone. It's based on the second generation Leatherman Wave as opposed to the Leatherman Wave Plus, which is the current generation of the Leatherman Wave. But from what I can tell, initially, it looks pretty close. It's a pretty close copy of the Leatherman Wave. Now, we're going to test some bunch of stuff out on it today, and we're going to see how it performs against the Leatherman Wave to make an assessment as a kind of an initial assessment. Obviously, unless you use these really long term, it's hard to tell all the nuance differences. But one thing I do want to say is that the cases for these are almost identical. So I really like this case. This is what Leatherman started putting out in 2018. And the Gordon is set up pretty similarly. I like this case. It's not only did they copy the tool, but they copied their case as well. Well, actually, this one's for the Leatherman Wave Plus, but I'm a big fan of the case that comes with this. This is a lot better sheath than you're going to find from other Chinese manufactured clones for Leatherman Wave or Leatherman Surge. Well, let's test out and see how the Gordon compares to the Leatherman Wave. So one of the tasks that I do often, if I can get this wire to cooperate with me, is cut THHN. This is something I do with my Leatherman Surge all the time, so it's something I want to test out on all these. And we're going to give it a baseline. This is through a set of really good Kleins. So this is a true set of wire cutters. I'm going to set that to the side and facing that direction so we know which side we cut on. And this is the Leatherman Wave. Make sure we get it on the cutters and not on the hardwire cutters. Snap that through there. That's the Leatherman Wave. Let's do the Leatherman Wave Plus. It's pretty clean as well, though through experience I know that's a bit flattened out. And then finally we'll do the Gordon. One thing I will say about the Gordon, it comes smooth out of the gate, but we'll see if that affects its performance. So make sure we're on the cutters. And it did okay. Let me try that again. Let me go a little higher up, make sure I didn't. Uh-oh. Well, now we jammed up. Oh man, it won't come out. Okay, hold on. Let me grab something here. I'm going to pry this baby open and see what's going on there. Ooh, that's not good. Let me cut that off. We'll set that here and take a look at it. Okay, well let's take a look at these. So left on the baseline, and then let's do the better cut here on this one, and then the Leatherman Wave Plus. So hopefully this will focus up okay, and I'll try to get it so the light shines on it and give a better idea. So our baseline was with the first one, and then the second one is the Leatherman Wave. You can see it makes a clean cut, but it's a little squished down. The third one is the Gordon, and it looks like on this that it really didn't pierce all the way through there, all the way through the copper. So it got halfway through it, and then it more or less kind of didn't really shear it, but rather slid over the top of it and just crushed it. And then the last one is the Leatherman Wave Plus, and it did a good job of getting through it, though it is a little bit flattened out too. Now, if we go back here to this one, where our pliers jammed up, and you kind of see that's what's going on. So it cuts through about the first half of it, but then the second half, it really just kind of lays it over. Oh man, focus up, please. And it's just not shearing correctly. So let's investigate this a little further and see what's going on with it. Okay, so I moved the camera down here a little bit closer so we can take a look. You see how the Leatherman Wave has a much thinner shear. So that's the reason why it gets through there. Now, it's a little blunted on the edges, but it gets through there a little bit more cleanly through that copper wire. If we move over to the Gordon, we can kind of see that it is a lot more of a blunted edge, and it just will not focus, will it? So it is pretty thick on that edge. That's part of the reason that lends it to not shearing well. And then if we go over to the Leatherman Wave Plus, there we go. It has a bit more of a blunt edge too, but not quite as thick as the Gordon does. The next thing that I want to show with this is that here's the Leatherman Wave. You can see how as the cutters come together, they bypass very, very closely to one another. Let's try to focus in on the Gordon. See if we can get that to focus up right. And if we bypass, it's fairly tight, and I know it's difficult to see on camera, but I can tell that there is a slight gap in between the two cutting edges. And so that's another contributing factor as to why it does not cut as cleanly through that hard or that soft wire. And then if we do the Leatherman Wave Plus, man, come on, focus for me. It just doesn't want to focus up. Maybe it's because of the distance there. Well, I know that you can't tell it as cleanly as I can, but the cutters on the Leatherman Wave Plus actually bypass much tighter than the Gordon. So there's two contributing factors to this. The first of which is that the cutters themselves are more blunted, and the second is that the cutters have a little bit too much tolerance between them to make a nice clean cut on that copper wire. So after looking a little closer at this can be rectified to a degree. You can come in here because there's room to, once you get the pliers opened up, to actually take a diamond file and get you a little bit sharper edge by filing on the angled side of these pliers in order to get a little sharper edge, and I bet that would cut quite a bit cleaner. But out of the gate, the Wave definitely outperforms the Gordon in this respect. Okay, as far as the plier tips themselves go, they're all pretty accurate with one another. They come down to a nice clean point, though the one in the center, so we have left to right, Leatherman Wave, Gordon, and then Leatherman Wave Plus. And the Leatherman Wave has a little bit thinner plier tip to it. The Gordon does come down to a nice sharp point, but it's a little, the pliers themselves are a little bit thicker. And then on the right we have the Wave Plus, which is fairly identical to that of the Leatherman Wave. Okay, I think for the rest of this we'll just concentrate on Wave against the Gordon. So I've got a bunch of staples that I just ran in with a hammer stapler. We'll see how they perform when pulling these staples out. So first, the Leatherman Wave. It grabs hold of it, but that's held in there pretty good. If I can get it up just slightly and then get it pulled. So it doesn't do bad. Let's do another one. This one's setting a little higher up, so it might come out a little easier. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. Okay, I think I got a hold of it now. There we go. All right, so Leatherman Wave does a pretty good job, especially with those staples being shoved in there so far. So let's try one that's really flushed up. This one seems to be. Okay, Gordon did pretty good. Now we'll try one that's raised up a little bit more. This one here should do. Yeah, that did pretty well. So as far as the plier tips themselves go, even though that's a little bit thicker or a little bit wider, I don't see any real performance difference between the two. So they're pretty on par with one another in that regard. Okay, now let's test out their hard wire. So I got a couple of finish nails. Now granted, this is not a task that I do with a Leatherman very often, but I know it can be done because if you remember back in the day, this is the Leatherman Surge. Remember back in the day, Leatherman, or Tim Leatherman, used to go around to the trade shows, and he had this little deal set up where, because he didn't have the hand strength to do it, but he would take the charge, which was his favorite, and set it in this contraption, and then he would step on it, and it would shear 16-penny nails all day long. So, there we go. That is a Surge. You got to put a little hand strength behind there in order to do that, and you can see the Surge handles that with no problem. There's the cut side. The other one went flying off somewhere. So now let's give this a try with both of these tools. Hopefully I'll be able to do this. Oh man, that takes some hand strength. Okay, so Leatherman Wave got through there, and now I got to go track down that piece that flew off. Okay, I found it. All right, so Gordon multi-tool. So we'll get it into its hardwire cutters, and oh my God. Okay, it's not gonna do it. Let's see, I'm gonna try one more time. You know what I think it is? I think it has to do with the Leatherman having that wider area, this nail just won't seat in there right. So maybe it would do it because it's getting up on the cutters, and that's probably the reason why it won't get through there, not necessarily the cutters themselves. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Okay, so let me go try a little. Let me grab a little thinner nail, see if we can get a nail that fits in the cutters better, if it'll work. Okay, I found a couple smaller nails, so for just to make it fair, let's do it with the Wave. So the Wave shouldn't have any problem. Wave is right through there, nice clean cut. And let's do it with the Gordon now. Well, I can tell you one thing, it bends over quite a bit, so let me see if I can highlight this. So I set it in the Wave, trying to get it up. Well, I guess it bends over a little bit with the Wave too. See how that nail, as I was cutting it, it kind of twisted like that. Yeah, it's more pronounced. You see, it cuts it, but it's a lot more pronounced with the Gordon. And I think that probably because of those pliers, the cutters themselves not bypassing quite as sharp a tolerance. So you can see the Wave bends it over too, but because the shears or the cutters are in a much tighter tolerance with one another, it snaps it before it has a chance to roll over. So in the end, the cutters themselves on the Wave are far superior to those of the Gordon. Now the next thing I don't really have anything tested out on is I want to try the main pliers, but I can tell that, first of all, the pliers on the Gordon are quite a bit larger. I know it may be difficult to tell, and even if we set it up one on top of each other, because of the angle of the camera, it's very tough to distinguish that. But the pliers themselves are a bit wider at the base, and also at the tip, and also through the body of it. They're not, so the Wave has that smooth grind to it. This one has a bit of a smooth grind, but they don't grind quite as much material off of it. And even here at the base, it's just built a little bit bigger than that of the Wave. So in theory, these should be, for their main pliers, should be stronger. I'll have to test them out over time in order to give you an adequate response as to whether or not they are, in fact, superior to those of the Wave. But from what I can tell with the rest of the pliers, the Wave has just done better so far. Okay, next up is the knife blades. Now, full disclosure, when I got this tool and I went to open the blades, they were very tough to open. So what I did is I had to go in and I had to loosen up on the torque screw here just a little bit on each side in order to get those, because they were tightened down a little too tight. That's not really that big a deal, but I want to let you know. Now there's, you can tell, okay, let me shut up for a second and we're going to open these up and you can kind of hear the difference in quality. So Wave first. It may be hard to distinguish, but I can tell it's just the sound that the when the liner lock snaps into position, it's just a more quality feel with the Leatherman Wave. So let's get some stuff. We're going to get some cardboard, some paper. We'll try out. Now this is 420HC, and if we can bring the blades up closer, you can see that the Wave blade has a much more profiled grind to it, so there's a lot more grind edge. I think the blade here is probably thicker too. It looks to be. I'll have to get some calipers out to check it, but yeah, I can tell it that this one is a little bit thinner, and you can kind of see it at the base too. I don't know by how much, but it definitely is. The Wave blade looks better. We'll see how it performs. This might be a little bit more slicey because of the thickness of the Wave blade, but we'll try it out. Okay, first thing we have is just some yellow pad paper. This is doubled up a couple times, so Wave. Yeah. And I don't remember how much I've used that, but it's pretty sharp. And I got to say that the Gordon is pretty sharp too. So as far as the knife blade out of the factory, it is pretty on par with sharpness. Now, this is obviously a little lesser quality steel than the 420HC, but they're comparable in a lot of ways. I think sometimes we go a little overboard with knife steels on Leatherman products or multi-tools in general. I don't necessarily know that we need a MagnaCut blade on like their newest, like the Leatherman Arc, don't get me wrong, it's nice, but it also lends to the higher prices of these tools as well. So in a more utilitarian, which basically the Wave is, this is not the designer or the, that would be the, for its day, that would have been the Charge Plus. It's more of a workman's tool as opposed to, the little bit flashier tool. So, and that's why we saw better blade steels in the Charge and Charge Plus over the years as opposed to the Wave. Okay, I found an old paper towel roll. We'll just have that doubled and see how it does. So there's the Wave. And try it with the Gordon. Okay, there we start seeing a little bit, well, maybe not. Maybe that was just because of where I was at. Now I don't know. They're both doing pretty good. I have to hit it a couple times with the Gordon, but it's not bad. So blade sharpness out of the factory, not too bad. Obviously, the 420HC is going to be a little higher quality blade steel, but as far as having a decent knife, and this one's going to be probably a little easier to sharpen up, and it's a little thinner in profile, so it might be a little bit more slicey blade over time. I think they're pretty well on par with one another, though I probably still lean a little bit more towards the Wave's blade. Okay, so when we try the other knife blades, this is a serrated blade. This is where you can really kind of tell the difference in the quality by the sound. Wave, Gordon. So it's just a much crisper lock. It just lends to more confidence, in my opinion, but that's subjective. So let me get some rope, and we'll try to cut on these and see how they do. Okay, I really don't want to cut on my good rope, so I found some old nasty stuff. So let's try it with the Wave. Is that yeah, that's the Wave. So we'll try it with the Wave first. Nice and smooth, cuts right through there. And now the Gordon. Well, that was impressive. That cut just as good as the Wave. So that was really good. Let's look at the profile a little bit. So they got a little bit longer valley in the profile for the serrated blade on the Gordon. Lends it to be pretty smooth. I actually like that grind on there. So as far as that goes, they're both pretty much on par with one another. Now you can see that on the tip that the Leatherman gives you a little bit more straight blade or draw cut blade up the front, and the other one is a little less. So if we try that, there's the Wave. And you can kind of, I know it's hard to tell sometimes on video, but the Wave left behind a thicker line than the thinner blade of the Gordon did. So, and they both cut really well through that stuff. I've hardly had to put any pressure at all on either one of those. And so as far as that goes, they're pretty much on par with one another. Now I need to look up see if I can find some paracord or something and try out the one feature that's on this tool that is not on this tool. We didn't see these, the hook or gut blade. They only came out on the Charge series of tools. All right, I was able to find some paracord, and let's just give this a shot. Okay. Oh yeah, it didn't. I thought it wasn't going to go through there, but I just had to wiggle it a little bit. Let me try that again. Not terrible. It's profiled, or it's ground in two different directions, so it leaves for a pretty sharp edge. I'm not unimpressed with that. I'll tell you what, let me go get a Charge out, and we'll test it against there, and we'll see. Okay, I had to go get my all-time favorite Leatherman, well, with the exception of the Surge, because I use it so much, but for my all-time favorite Leatherman, this black-on-black Charge is absolutely my favorite. It's just a gorgeous multi-tool. Let's try, we'll cut it on this. So you can see that the cut edge on this is quite a bit deeper than that of the Gordon. And actually, the Charge is not cutting through that. Well, that is unexpected. Let me try that again. Wonder if it's me. Let me see if we jerk on that. Nope. Well, how about that? Looks like the Gordon outperforms the Charge in that regard. Sure does. So, how about that? 1 point goes to the Gordon. So it has a better, this one looks better. but actually this one cuts better. Okay, next up are the files, and I got a piece of drop off the plasma cutter table, so this might be a good test. I work with metal, so I usually test on metal. So let's try first the regular file for the Wave. And that digs in there pretty good. Not bad. Let me give it a little bit more. It might be better if I could hold that steady. Anyway, for what it's worth, the Wave files are always pretty good. Now let's go up a little bit. We'll go out a little bit actually, and we'll try it with the Gordon. Yeah, not bad. It doesn't do bad. It's a little more aggressive, but I think the Wave actually does a little better, even though this one feels like it should. The Wave is just slightly, ever so slightly better, but they're both pretty good. I'm not going to knock that file. It's pretty good. So the edge file on here, a lot more aggressive. So if we look at the edge file on this one, and then we look at the edge file on this one, you can tell that the Gordon is a lot more aggressive. So let's go to a different edge here, and we'll try it here. There's the Wave. And now the Gordon. That's hard to tell. Doesn't look like it's damaged the edge any. That more aggressive, you know what, let's get a little piece of wood and try it on that too. Okay, I think we'll do one side with one and one side with the other here. So this is the Wave standard file first. Yeah, that digs in there in a hurry. And then let's do the Gordon up a little higher. Oop, wrong side. Well, let me get it solid. Yeah, not bad. But here's the thing, is this is leaving a lot of, it's a little smoother. Well, how do I want to put this? It's kind of skipping over it because it's not really digging, the file is not discharging the sawdust behind it, and so it's giving it not as good of a file. So let's do the Wave on this side. You can really hear that Wave digging into it. Now this one, kind of hear how it's slipping over it. It's not really grabbing into it. Now, don't get me wrong, it does a decent job, but it's just the Wave file is just cut a little bit better. All right, let's try the edge files on this wood. So first the Wave. Yeah, that cut in there really well. Okay, so the more jagged edge, don't get me, this cuts in there really nicely, but the jagged edge lends it to grab harder, and so as you're filing on it, or as you're trying to cut through it, the Wave just digs in, and it doesn't grab as hard, so it doesn't limit your motion. With this one, as I'm putting pressure on it to try to cut forward, it's just grabbing too hard. So not to say that it's not a good file, it's just that it just grabs more aggressively is how I want to put that. I think the Wave file gets it here. I don't really have anything. I guess I could on that metal try these diamond files a little bit. Let's see if we can get an edge here that we haven't messed with. So let's do the Gordon here. That's pretty nice. And now we'll do the Wave. Yeah, that was definitely nicer. So, okay, as far as the files go, ooh, wow. I don't know. Well, maybe that's just discoloration. I was thinking that it was pulling off that diamond coating, but no, it's not. So that's been a problem with some of these Chinese manufactured multi-tools in the past, is even though they have a diamond coated file, you use them a couple times and it just rips it right off. This one seems to be holding up pretty well. I originally thought that's what it was, but no, it's just discoloration. I can still feel that diamond pattern in there, though I will say that it feels like it smoothed it up quite significantly there where we were testing on it. Let me try it a little bit more. Let me get a little bit more solid here. It does a really nice job. No, I think the coating is holding up okay. So this is not a problem that we've seen, or this is a problem we've seen in the past with these Chinese clones. This one seems to be pretty well adhered, and the file on there was pretty nice. So I like the diamond file on this one. I think that the other two files, the Wave has it beat fairly handily, in my opinion. Okay, when it comes to the saw blades, right off the start, I can tell you that this is a lot thinner than the Wave. So let's see if we can tell it from the flex. There's the Wave, and there's the Gordon. Now, I don't know if that's going to make any difference on the cut. We're going to go try it right now and find out. Okay, so this is hard to quantify, but my personal opinion is the more straight tooth pattern and the little bit more aggressive tooth pattern of the Gordon makes it a little bit more difficult to handsaw with it than the Leatherman does. They both do a good job of cutting, don't get me wrong. It felt more comfortable using the Wave saw as opposed to the Gordon. Now when it comes to their screwdrivers, the Wave is a little bit thicker and it's a little bit wider as well. So if I can get it to focus there. So I don't really have anything to test these out on. These are good for light duty pry tools too. So more often than not, you know, opening up little cans of thinner and paint, stuff like that. But they work really good as slotted drivers too. The Wave is going to be stronger. This one's thinner, and so it's not as robust. It's not something you really have to test to know. This one is definitely a better screwdriver than this one is. Here's something that we get a little bit of difference on. The micro drivers on these are retentioned in different ways. So on the Gordon, it has a little magnetic retention, and on the Leatherman, it's spring retention. Now, if you've watched some of my reviews in the past, you know I'm not a big fan of magnets in multi-tools. I don't mind it so much in extensions because you always have a bit in there and it's protected in a way. So just in my industry, I get a lot of metal dust, metal shavings, so I'm not a big fan of magnets in multi-tools. That being said, this one is done really well, and the retention on there is pretty great, but the retention on the Leatherman Wave with that spring is way, way stronger. As far as the bits go, you know, I don't have anything I don't have any glasses that I need to test on or to try it on or have anything I can actually put them on. But I think they're both going to work equally well. This one is definitely built a little thicker, a little bit more robust. The Gordon is a little thinner, but I don't think it's going to affect it in any way as far as performance for this type of screwdriver. So this is kind of, you know, pick your poison. Which style do you prefer more than the other? I still lean towards this, and only because it has a stronger retention than that magnet. Though for some people, the ability to, as long as it doesn't fall out, the ability to extract it and replace it a little easier might be an advantage as opposed to a disadvantage. Okay, for their scissors, let's try out some of that paracord we were working on earlier. So as far as the scissors go, these look like almost identical carbon copies of one another. Same detent, looks like similar. Well, the nose of this plier dips a little bit. This is more rounded. The cutting surfaces, the angle is a little steeper on this one. This one has a bit more shallow of an angle, so we'll see how they perform. So first the wave, not bad. The wave doesn't do great. It's, you know, when you don't have any pressure, when you're not kind of holding it with pressure on it to cut paracord on the end like that. But it does decent. So we'll try this both ways too. That snapped through there really cleanly. Oh, okay. So the Gordon has better scissors for sure. We'll try that again. Out here on the edge, would you get about an 1/8 inch off? Well, maybe a little bit more. I'm giving it a little too much. A little too much flexibility there. And then we'll do it with the wave. Let me clean that off. Yeah, it's close. It's very, very close. I think the Gordon gets it on this one though. Now, when we talk about the bit exchanger, this is where Gordon differs from other manufacturers that have tried to clone the Leatherman Wave, is that they elected to go with the same proprietary bits that Leatherman uses, as opposed to trying to get a 1/4 inch driver into their frames. And I know a lot of people like that. I'm not a huge fan of it, and I'll tell you why. Is because on other models of multi-tools, in order to get the necessary width between the frame to get a true 1/4 inch driver in there, they have to use thinner metal on the frame. And the Gordon did not do that. The Gordon has pretty much the same thickness of steel as the Leatherman Wave frame, and so it lends to being as solid of a frame as the Leatherman Wave. When you use a little thinner steel, in order to gain the ability to use a true 1/4 inch driver, you sacrifice some of the structure of the tool itself. So I actually prefer it this way. I know that some people are going to disagree with that, and that's fine. And I completely understand why you'd want a 1/4 inch, true 1/4 inch driver. I'm just saying you sacrifice in other areas because of it. So they do the retention on this one a little bit different too. They use a magnet down at the bottom, whereas the Leatherman uses their spring retention here on the side. And it's definitely stronger on this tool. This one is not a true, they don't print it on here, so I think this one is this was probably a combo. They look pretty much the same. And the same 3/16 driver on the other side. Now, who knows? I don't even know if they sell a bit kit for their tool, but rather just this bit that gives you the option to go from Phillips to flat driver. I like the retention on this one better, though personally I hardly ever use these drivers. Even on this one, I would come back and put in an extension, which when you put a full extension on there, I got to say that holds in there pretty well, for sure. And the magnetic retention back there, I don't mind, as long as it's, well, I don't know, it's kind of open, so it just depends. But this one is just a solid. This is one of those things you just have to decide for yourself which one you like better. I'm okay with either one of these in this particular instance because they both hold in the extension, which I use more often than not, and use real 1/4 inch drive bits. So in this area, I think they're going to be even with one another. When the can openers, they are almost identical in profile, thickness, the whole works. So as far as, I might go get a can and try them, but what I was more interested in is the wire stripper at the bottom. Now the way I do this with Leatherman tools is I just get the tool out, then release the tool lock so that I can pinch the wire between the frame and the cutter themselves, and then you can kind of rotate the tool around the cutters as opposed to the opposite way. So we'll first score it, and then we'll come up a little higher, grab the insulation a little higher up, and then we should be able to strip it. There we go. So I don't have a whole lot to purchase on this particular wire, and I'm going to have the same, well, here we go. I'll use a longer piece. And we'll try the same thing on the Gordon. Now, I could tell that the V opening on the Wave is just slightly at a wider angle. I don't know if it's going to make that much difference, so let's try it this way. Oh, let me come up. Yeah, did it good. Did really well, actually. So maybe, let me try that again. First I want to cut that off. Let's try it with a wave. We'll try to do it so that they're equal length, about 3/4 of an inch or something like that. Wave first, go a score around, jump up, pull. Did really nice. And then the Gordon, try to get it about the same length. Score around, jump up, pull. Oh yeah, they're both really great. I like that. Of course, you know, that would be, you know, without having tested them to begin with, that would have been my assumption, because they're so closely matched in profile or design. So let me go see if I can get a can, and we'll test the can openers real quick. Well, I was going to go raid the pantry, but I don't want the wife to jump all over me, so I think I'll test those out later. I'll get back to you and see how those can openers work, but I can tell you from what I can see, they're both going to work the same. So one other little thing that I want to show you is on the handle opening retention, and another thing that Gordon does that other clones don't do. So you notice that the way the Wave works to hold the handles in their open position is it has a cam here, and inside it has an opening spring. And so as you open the tool up, this engages with those two pieces. You can kind of see it here. They spread apart, and at the same time it kicks a little nub out here that makes the blade lock. So when you get it in its open position, now this blade can't be extracted. And as soon as you close the handle up, now that little nub drops down because that spring is collapsed back on itself, and it's able to open up. This is kind of a safety feature to the Wave, Charge, and Search series. Now the Gordon does this a little bit differently. You notice that, so let me close this. So on the Wave, it uses a two springs where it goes in between two springs and it spreads them open. On the Gordon, it is a single and it just pushes over to one side. So if we open this up, you can see, I mean, it's dual spring down there. Why is that working that way? Maybe I'm missing something. So come open. Oh, the other one pushes up. Okay, so the other one pushes up into the valley of the back of the pliers here, and the first one gets pushed over. How does that lock? Because I know it's locking. It's a little bit different. Let me look at that closer. There's the spring. How is that working? Oh, it's using it's using pressure. Okay, so instead of the blade, let's see if I can open that up and see that better. Okay, it's using the liner lock. So it's just putting pressure. So there's the nub on this one. And if you were to open that up, which I can't do in this position, but as you open up, it pushes into the blade itself and doesn't allow it, just does it through pressure. And that's pretty nice. It works pretty well. So anyway, I wanted to highlight the difference here in the cams. And this is that knife holding retention is not something that other clones have done in the past that I've noticed. So that's a one up for Gordon. They've done a pretty good job with that. The only other thing left to really discuss is on the back here and their tool lock mechanisms. So, well, that, and this one uses security bits, security Torx. This one uses just regular Torx, so it's a little easier to work on. You can see that on the back here, the profile or the design of the caps is a little bit different. The tool lock mechanisms work great on both of them, so you can hear that positive snap in there. Really solid lock on there. Same thing with the Leatherman. So you can hear how that snaps into place. Both of those tool lock mechanisms are really good. This one has maybe a little bit of wiggle to it. It's about the same on both of them. I'm not going to take any points off of the Gordon for that. But their tool locks themselves, pretty similar. This one, this one has more of a shine. This is more of a matte finish. But the engagement on there, in fact, the Gordon might have a little deeper engagement on its tool lock. So I don't necessarily know that the tools on a Wave would swap over perfectly in a Gordon or vice versa, because it has a little deeper cut in the tools themselves. So they both do pretty well on that. So I'm not going to complain about little nuanced things like that. But the Gordon does a pretty good job, I got to say, and especially for $40. It's really hard to discount its value. So in the end, how do they stack up against one another? Well, this is probably not going to be the most popular opinion, because I know a lot of people want to, because of its cheaper price, want to say that the Gordon is the better multi-tool. It is in fact not the better multi-tool. The Leatherman Wave does many, many things either a little bit better or noticeably better than the Gordon. Here's what I will say though, is that this is the closest clone I've ever personally seen or used to a Leatherman Wave, and the little things that it doesn't do quite as well as the Leatherman Wave, for a lot of people, are not going to make that big a difference. But when you're talking about a tool that costs a third of the price of this tool, or actually this tool, it is hard to tell people, no, don't buy this, because it does a lot of things really well. So I think it's a really good value. This would be a great multi-tool for a young person who's getting their first multi-tool, just getting introduced into it, or for someone who wants a beater that they're really not concerned about tearing up. I didn't even ask about the warranty on this one. I don't know if this, because a lot of Harbor Freight stuff has lifetime warranties on it. I don't know if this falls under that, to be honest with you. Something I probably should have checked on, and I'm sure other reviewers have laid out whether or not that's true. I apologize for not checking on that, but it is very hard to say don't buy this multi-tool because it's not better than the Wave. That's obviously the case, but it's so close. It's so very, very close. Has a little bit different blade steel, not quite as good. Obviously the pliers were not quite as good. A couple of the other things, not quite as good as the Leatherman, but it's so close to it that it's hard to say. It's not like the Wave completely whipped the Gordon by any stretch of the imagination, and it performed most general tasks very, very well. So at any rate, I think this is a good multi-tool, especially for its price, especially for someone who's just getting started or someone who wants a beater. Leatherman Wave is definitely better. So if you're looking to get the best, then you get the Leatherman Wave. If you're looking to get something that has great value without breaking the bank, then that's going to be the Gordon. My name is Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I'll see you in the next one.